Hi, Dawn. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
This is pretty exciting stuff. I have been, in the recovery world, I guess more non-anonymous for probably close to 4 years.
Yeah.
And, over the last couple of years, She Recovers has come to my attention quite a bit. So I'm super excited to have you on the show. This is an honor.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm excited and so proud of the work that you're doing with SHAIR as well. And all the people in your community, they're amazing.
They are amazing. We've managed
Yeah.
to bring together some very loving and
Yeah.
positive people, and that's what we're seeking for. We're trying to create that very attractive,
Yeah.
nature or attractive pull into recovery.
Totally get it. Totally get it. We're all about that too, right? It's just, I always say we all know what addiction looks like. Let's show them what modern recovery looks like.
Yes, because it looks amazing.
Pretty good, yeah. Look, usually looks better, but I'm having fuzzy hair from the very rainy West Coast today. But I'm actually not too concerned about my looks most days. But holy crap, I do have fuzzy hair going on. But that's okay. I'm going to be okay with it.
I didn't know it was that long.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Totally, I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome.
A
All
little
right,
longer
so
than yours.
yeah, yeah, you could say that. So, so folks, for those of you listening, this is Dawn Nickel joining us on the SHAIR podcast. Dawn is the founder of She Recovers. And Dawn has been in recovery since 1987, alcohol-free since that time, struggled a little bit until 1989 with marijuana, drug-free for nearly 11 years before relapsing on prescription drugs. But now, today, Dawn celebrates almost 18 years clean from all drugs and alcohol since May 2017. In Dawn's view, we are all recovering from something, and we're stronger together. She's a strong advocate for the view that each woman in or seeking recovery must be supported to find the tools and pathways that will work best for her as an individual. In the summer of 2011, while recovering from a serious cause of workaholism, I totally get that, Dawn decided to apply what she knew about recovery to that area of her life. On an extended leave from work, Dawn began to blog and created the Facebook page She Recovers to share her journey and to reach out to other women wanting to recover their lives and their potential. That sound about right, Dawn?
Perfect. Yeah, pretty well.
All right, excellent. Well, that's what we're going to be focusing on today, is primarily that journey into She Recovers. We'll touch a little bit about, what it was like, but more importantly, what it's like now, because I
Yeah.
love the direction that you're going in. So we'll dive into that.
Yeah.
But first,
Thanks.
yes, you're welcome.
Fire away.
All right. So first, tell us a little bit about your normal daily routine currently, including recovery, because I know how busy you are.
Well, you know what? I decided a little while ago that I had to take busy out of my vocabulary because I was so tired of listening to it come out of my mouth. And just, gosh, we're just so privileged to lead the lives we lead. But yeah, life is full. That's kind of how I've reframed it for myself. Life is really full. And a lot of really exciting things going on with She Recovers. And which is probably, She Recovers is my life right now. My day is, today's a good example of a balanced day. So I'll give you today, because every other day doesn't look like this. But Mondays, we have our 2-year-old granddaughter who lives 2 blocks away. Her mom works, our daughter works, and her dad too. And so we take her on Mondays. And that means that on Mondays, I put my phone away as often as I can. I generally don't take calls on a Monday, but we had already booked this in advance, and this was important to me, so this is great to do this. But normally I give my day over to taking care of this little 2-year-old and just having fun with her and playing with all sorts of little things. We went to the library this morning. Then I went and had grabbed myself a nice decaf latte because I don't drink caffeine anymore. And yeah, I get up at about 6 in the morning. I do a guided meditation every morning. Sarah Blondin is my shtick right now. So for anybody who hasn't listened to Sarah Blondin on Insight Timer, she's just changed my life. I have the same thing for breakfast almost every single day. I have fruit and yogurt with granola. And yeah, I'm really lucky. I'm married to a man who is 29 years clean, and he's fantastic. He's retired, and he just takes care of everything in my life. So during the day, I can work literally all day because I don't have to do I don't do any cleaning. I don't do any shopping. I don't do any cooking. I don't do anything in our life, except I actually keep track of the bank account. Have to have control somewhere. So I do the finances, and he does absolutely everything else. So generally my life is just, she recovers from dawn till dusk. Mondays it's different. In the evenings I try and put my computer away, and I bead, like we make malas. So that's a really good meditation, another kind of an evening meditation, and a way to get my brain away from the computer and just kind of settle down. I go to bed really early, about 9 o'clock, and usually read until about 10, so I can get up again at 5:36 and start all over again. I generally I love going for walks, like hiking and walking. Haven't done that much because it's been a really, really crappy spring here on the West Coast, and I'm a fair weather walker, and I'm not ashamed of that. Like, I will not go out in the rain. I don't care. I'm not. So I'm looking forward to actually, I'm heading out of town next week for a month, and I'll be in Massachusetts, and then I hope it's not snowing there anymore, and then Atlanta, and then Mexico. So I'll get back on my routine and do lots of beach walking. But yeah, just kind of pretty standard life. It's just, she recovers all the time, and we have some great friends, and they pop in. A lot of people in recovery, so we kind of have that going on. We have another a grandson who's 9, so try to get a little bit of his hockey games in once in a while. But right now, at this particular time in my life, it's a lot about work, and I'm okay with that.
Yes, a lot of takeaways just in this small opening, like when we started this conversation, because the way we talk externally is the way we talk internally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so constantly reaffirming negatives or reaffirming what we don't want, right, brings more of what we don't want. So that's been my challenge too. Like, I am super busy, and so I get more busy instead of, life is full.
Yeah.
And so when I look at life as in a paradigm shift, right, what does that do to my state? How does that make me feel internally? Because there's an internal and external state. So I love the way you phrase that.
Yeah. I try to look at it like, and I don't, I don't always succeed at it. Sometimes, like, I actually pull my hair out and go, I'm overwhelmed. I can't do this. But not so much anymore. But I try to look at, like, my list of things that I get to do instead of the things that I have to do. That's just another kind of psychological trick I play with myself. But yeah, it's the stories we tell ourselves, right?
Yes, absolutely. We are constantly telling ourselves stories all day long. Whether I think I can or I think I can't, I'm right. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm overwhelmed, right? But that's just when that anxiety comes in, it's an opportunity to make a choice, to make a decision. And it's time to prioritize what is important and what versus what I feel I need to do or someone else expects me to do versus what I want to do makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, and just to close that off, I like what I like to say is that I'm just not a person who's going to achieve daily balance in my life. I'm just not not for any sustained period of time. But what I do is I balance out over the year. And I think I see you do that too. I see that you have people visiting, and you're out, or whether you're entertaining or out touristing around with people. So right now I've been stuck to my computer for about 3 weeks. Before that, I was I don't even know where I was. I was in Boston, I think, and in Edmonton visiting family. So, like, I have periods of like 3 to 5 weeks where I'm just work, and then I'm traveling and I'm play. So I really do try and balance it out over the longer term. I just gave up ages ago trying to have, like, I'm just going to work from 8 till 12, and then I'm going to have an hour off, and then I'm going to stop at 4. Like, it isn't practical. So I just do make sure that I do really take downtime as often as I can. And when I say down, I mean down and out, like flat. Like, I'm not the least bit productive. I just lie down and read books, nap in the sun, do those things. So anyway.
Well, it sounds like you're a super high performer. So when you do work, you work at a level that is at a peak level, probably higher than most. And then when it's time to shut it down, you shut it down. It sounds pretty balanced to me.
Yeah. Thank you. Right on. Good.
Well, it is, because I'll disappear. Right.
Uh-huh.
I disappear from social media. I've disappeared for the last week and a half. I had like you said, I had my family down. This last weekend, I'm currently right now over the next 2 weekends in an NLP practitioner training.
Oh, wonderful.
At the end of next week, I'll be a certified NLP practitioner, also in timeline therapy and hypnotherapy.
That's
So,
wonderful.
so
Wow,
I will.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And so I will disconnect, right? I don't feel like I need to try and balance both,
Yeah,
because I need to focus my attention and my energy on what it is that I'm doing,
that's
because
right.
it's just like recovery. Half measures availed as nothing.
Right.
So I've got to,
Yeah.
like today is Monday. I have 2 interviews today, and I'm going to do some stuff for the podcast so I can, for next Tuesday's episode, because tomorrow's is done. Next Tuesday's will be ready today. And then
Yeah.
the rest of the week, I'll be studying for the upcoming weekend in NLP. And
Great.
I don't have a problem at all just going, social media, ciao, right?
Good. Oh, I'm glad. Good for you. Good for you.
I love it. We are on the same page.
Yeah, well, I'm not very good at disconnecting from social media because so much of our business is on social media, and it's just Taryn and I doing it, my daughter and I. So I don't get, I cut back a little bit when I need to, but I don't really ever get much of a break. I'm working on that though. I'm gonna find a way to do that. It's just we need to find somebody else to help us.
Yeah. Okay. I'll
Ask
reframe
for
that.
help.
I'll reframe that too. And I like what you said too. I'll reframe. I'm never completely off social media, right? It's like I will engage, right? If I feel like, oh my goodness, I need to engage in this right
Right.
here. But when I mean
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
disconnect, it means I'm not in there doing Facebook lives, and I'm not like in the
Right.
page, posting in there and
Yeah.
commenting on everything. It's just like any
Right.
fires, any fires, any fires. Looks good. Everybody's
Got it.
happy.
Well, yeah. I know. I get it
But you're
completely.
right. If I have to
Yeah.
be, because I got people that hit me up on private message, hey, I'm interested in the coaching and this and this and that.
Yeah.
So you're right. I have to be, I choose to be as accessible as I need
Look at you learning. Awesome. You get to be.
to. All right. So one of the other thing that I noticed too was that you were talking about your guided meditation with,
Mhm.
it's Sarah Blander.
Sarah Blondin, Blondin. She's a creator of a
Blondin.
meditation series called Live Awake.
Okay. And
And
so, and
so
you,
I use her on Insight Timer. Is
mhm.
the app that I have on my phone. And yeah,
Okay.
she's just brilliant.
So, folks, for those of you listening, what Dawn does is she gets up in the morning. She uses Insight Timer. I've talked about that before. That's also the guided meditation that I use and my wife uses. And she referenced Sarah Blendin.
Blondin,
Uh,
Blondin.
Blondin. Thank you.
Blondin.
Thank you. I'm glad I've
Yeah.
got you on here. Blondin. And she's got Live and Awake, or Live Awake.
Live Awake is the name of her series on there, but you'll find her if you just search Sarah Blondin.
Okay, great. So
Yeah.
one of the questions that I ask is about spiritual condition, right? So I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to expand on that a little bit, you pray, you said you meditate in the morning.
Yeah.
How do you maintain your spiritual condition, that conscious contact with your higher power?
I've just had it for so long now that it just is. I guess that sounds kind of blasé, but um, I think when I wake up in the morning before I meditate, actually, I always kind of talk to my higher power. My
Mm-hmm.
higher power's name is Mary. I don't know, it's just complicated, but it's just called Mary. It's a she,
Mm-hmm.
Mary. And I just kind of ask her for help. And at the end of the day, thank her for guiding me and you know what, some mornings I forget and some evenings I forget, but I'm generally pretty good at it. When I'm in nature is really when I just feel closest to my higher power, which I mean, just because I call it Mary doesn't mean that it's an entity so much. It's an easy way for me to kind of communicate, is to have this kind of entity. But really my higher power is like right now I'm looking outside at like pure greenery, like so much green because of so much rain. I just have to walk down the street, and I walk into this beautiful place called Swan Lake where I live. And it's actually not a lake, it's a slough, but it's still called Swan Lake. And, I just walk around, and it's the smell of the moss right now. And it's a nature preserve. So there's geese and ducks and birds. And yeah, it's just, that's how I maintain it. Is my higher power is nature, I guess, more than anything. And so I maintain it by being in nature. I spend a lot of time in Mexico because we do She Recovers retreats there. And then my husband and I spend 2 to 3 months a year, usually January, February, a little bit of December. And, it's just kind of my feet and my toes in the sand, looking out at the turquoise sea. And yeah, those are really the things. I guess the other part that I feel really connected to a higher power is with our grandchildren.
Yeah.
Like, there's just nothing like a little 2-year-old snuggling up with you and looking in your eyes and saying, I love you, Nan. Love you forever. Like that connects me back into source and the world and kind of everything that we're all kind of connected to. Our grandson's 9 now. He's not so into us. We have a couple of other grandchildren who live very far away and we don't get to see them, but I'd say, yeah, those. And then, I guess I have like many little spiritual awakenings all the time when I witness the women in our community, whether that's on our She Recovers Facebook page or in our She Recovers Together secret Facebook group, or on our retreats or our workshops, or even at our annual conferences, when I see somebody connecting with something, whether it's just connecting back into a part of themselves or with another woman or with the truth of their, kind of their situation. That just always takes me right into this real heart-centered place of, oh, wow, I'm so amazed that I get to witness and be a part of this. So, yeah, I'm like, my spirituality is just, it's in me. I don't want to blow smoke up anybody's ass. I'm not like perfect spiritual being at all. But one of the things that I do have is just a really simple understanding of what spirituality is. And for me, it's like, it's a big part of me. It's what motivates me to do the work I do for practically no money. It's what it's kind of it's my humanity. My humanity and my spirituality are almost one and the same, and it's my purpose. So
that is amazing. And, one of the things I heard early on in recovery, because a lot of times we just take ourselves way too seriously. So I remember one of the guys that he was sharing, right? And I'll never forget it. It was like, I like to wear recovery like a loose garment, right? And it's just something that's been passed along from generation to generation. The whole concept of, wearing recovery like a loose garment. And I believe that you can do the same with spirituality when you don't take either one so seriously, because you remove the dogma you can remove the dogma from both.
Exactly.
And then it just becomes this entity. It just becomes energy. It just becomes this feeling. And I can just walk through it every day, and I just connect. I wake up in the morning and it's just effortless. And that took time, right? It didn't come overnight. So there was, when you've been in recovery for, almost 30 years, and, you've had an opportunity to have that conversation of spirituality over the years, many, many times. So I think it takes, after a while, you step into it. Right. But that's what we have to look forward to. I think the more that we give ourselves permission to enjoy it, to feel comfortable with it, to connect with it on the way we'd like to connect with it, it makes all the difference in the world.
It's so true. Of course I didn't always feel this way. I know we used to talk about, I used to believe that for everybody that we would have to work our recovery every single day of our lives. It would just be work, 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 work. And, you work your recovery for as many years as it takes before it just starts working on you. And it's just a part of you, right? If you're in 12-step recovery, then we work the steps, like work them, like pen to paper, like working them. And not that if you're in a 12-step program, not that it does, I think that it helps to every so often put your pen to paper and do that work. But I stopped years ago doing a set of steps every year because I live them. I honestly do. And again, I'm not perfect, but to the best of my ability, I live those steps. If I shit on, I'm swearing so much today. I was just gonna swear again. If I'm an ass to somebody,
This is
like
so
I
awesome.
feel it. As soon as I do it, as soon as I've been a jack but to my husband or to my daughters or to a friend, more my family, like you're like me, it's mostly my family that I take things out on. As soon as I do it, I know it. And so, and I can't like walk away. Well, I can't walk away for very long before I say, I was out of line. Like I was wrong. I'm sorry. So like that's living, I'm making amends right away. Um, I turn things over a lot. I don't like worrying. I'll do it for a period of time, but I will not go to bed. I will not wake up with yesterday's worries on my mind. I'll have new ones if I want, but like I let things go. It's just a perpetual step 3 in my life a lot of the times. And so yeah, it is. It just becomes natural, I guess, is what I'm saying. That recovery, spirituality, it comes naturally. And for a perfectionist like me, it took a long time for me to just let it be and let it be what it is and stop trying to create the perfect spiritual program, the perfect, to make myself look like I had the perfect spiritual program. That was important for a long time now. It just is what it is. And I'm okay with it. It's not perfect. It's not particularly profound, but it works for me.
Well, I think it looks pretty darn good from where I'm looking at, right? It certainly feels comfy the way you describe it, and it helps people bridge that gap who are having a problem. So I do want to talk a little bit about what it was like back in the day. So I know that you've had you can share as much or as little as you'd like, Don. This is your interview. But I would like to know, and now we have your May 2000 is when you got, is the last clean day, right? May
11th is my last clean date. Before that,
okay.
I used for 2 days in May after my mom passed away. I used for 2 days, and actually nobody knew I used. I was just using. She died, and I took conduct of her pills because why wouldn't I? I was the only person in recovery and in my family at that time that wasn't using. And then, within a few days I was using, but I remember talking to people in the program 4 years later when I realized what I had done. I wasn't going to meetings when my mom died. I was kind of away from my program of recovery. And, I basically I couldn't feel the pain that I was feeling. So I took her pills, and I remember I took them as prescribed. And then at the end of 2 days, I was, there were not very many pills left. And I just remember thinking, okay, I'm either going to take the rest of these and go get some more, or I'm going to dump these out and not do this anymore. Like, I didn't feel at that time that I was in any real jeopardy. I was using them to numb out. I was numbed out. Nobody knew I was doing that, but I knew that it was a crossroads for me. And so I threw them out, and I haven't used anything mood or mind altering other than chocolate maybe since. And it was the right thing for me to do. And I didn't really think of it as a relapse at the time. I just kind of kept going on with my merry little business. I was, doing a PhD and in school and concerned with that. And then 4 years later, my sister hit a bottom in recovery, and I took her to a meeting. And I just was like, I felt like I hadn't been to meetings for 4 years. And I just felt weird in a meeting, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I kept going to a few more meetings. And that's when I kind of fell in love with my 12-step program again. At that time, I'd been away for years and years. And I just realized that, you feel weird because you have a different clean date than you did last time you were in these rooms. And so I changed my clean date. So that was the last time I used. And you asked about my story and what it was like. Here's the thing. When I was living in the chaos of my addiction, it was primarily from the time I was 16 to 20. It was like wham, bam, a mess for 4 years, 4 overdoses. Suicide attempts. I was a disaster until I was 20 and I got pregnant with my oldest daughter. And I always like to say that I started using basically when I was 15, 16. By the time I was 17, I knew I had a problem. By the time I got pregnant, I didn't want to use anymore. And then it took me 7 years of I'd be abstinent for a period of time, and then I'd use, and I became a binge user instead of a daily user like I had been for 4 years. So when I look back at kind of that time, the only way I can characterize it was just chaos, emotional chaos. I was just unprepared. I left home, there were some things going on at home, and I left home at 16, and I ended up catapulted into this world in the Yukon. So think Alaska, kind of right next door to Alaska, the Canadian territory, the Yukon territory. And I just ended up in a situation with people who were using and dealing drugs, and I was just right in there. And that's what I did. I just got thrown into their world and embraced it as my own. And it was just chaotic. And I can't tell you a lot of what happened. Like, I have, like, most of those years are blackout. But what I do know is that it was just the usual thing that most people can relate to, of doing things and then feeling ashamed and then promising yourself you're never going to do them again for about 15 minutes until you did them again. And then just the cycle of, having to use and black out, or, overdose or whatever, just so that you didn't have to face what you had done. That was my story. So the fact that I survived those 4 years, when I nearly died 4 times, just amazes me. And I guess there's a reason for that. And then, like I said, I got pregnant. I still used through my pregnancy, but not like I had been. And then I have this beautiful little girl, and she changed my life. And I kind of went back to school, and I kind of started to get my act together, but I would every once in a while I would binge, and it was like really ugly when I did. I'd, drop her off at my mom and dad's. I was a single mom. Her dad and I were on and again, off again. She was 2, but I drop her off at my mom's on a Friday and say, I'm going out for an hour, and I'd come home on Monday. So, and I didn't, I would do that every 3 or 4 months for a number of years. And then I had a second daughter, who's now Taryn, my partner, and she recovers, and, married her dad. And it was a very abusive relationship. And we were, by that time, I was dealing drugs, and so was he. And it was pretty insane. Like, we were doing some pretty serious drug dealing things. And
what was your drug of choice?
Cocaine. That was my drug of choice. But I always had to have lots of vodka and lots of pills and, lots of pot, like everything. It was everything. But yeah, cocaine was kind of the thing that I thought I identified with most, and thought that the one thing that I didn't think I could live without, until my ex-husband, or he was my husband at the time, he ended up in drug-induced psychosis in 1987, and he ended up in St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver, BC. And at first, the doctors didn't recognize drug-induced psychosis, so they told me he was schizophrenic. And I was like, well, he's an asshole. I don't know. It could be. He could be anything. Like, okay, that's fine by me if that's what he is. And then then somebody who knew what drug-induced psychosis looked like said, no, he's got drug-induced psychosis. He's like a drug addict. And I was like, oh, thank God he's just a drug addict. Like, if that was better somehow. But so that was the beginning of my recovery, not his. He didn't do cocaine again. But I continued to use, and I continued to see a drug therapist, to figure out how I could get him to stop drinking and smoking pot, which he maintained he was never going to stop doing. And to his credit, he hasn't.
Wow, really?
Yeah, he grew up, and he's a moderate user. It's really weird. He's my ex, so he's not in my life, but
right,
he's doing okay. Anyway, I continued to see this counselor to figure out how to get him to smarten up. And after about 6 months, she just said to me one day, like, that she didn't even remember what he looked like, and she was tired of talking about him, and she wanted to talk to me about my drug problem. So that was weird, but I listened, and we did. And, I made a commitment to her that I would stop using. I could stop using. No problem. I do it all the time, which was true. And she said, yeah, but I think that, how long do you usually do it for? I said, sometimes a month, sometimes 3, like whatever. I said, but this time, like, I'm just going to stop forever. And I know that I can. And she said, and if you can't, would you make me a deal? And I said, sure. What is it? She said, if you use again, like if you binge use like you have been doing again, will you go to treatment? And I said, sure, because I'm not going to. Never going to use again. You're not listening. And about 4 weeks later, I was in treatment, because I somehow decided to be, I was always honest with her, which was, again, I'm not quite sure where that came from. But so I did go to treatment in 1997, and I have not used cocaine or had a drink since then. But when I got out of treatment, I started smoking way more pot than I ever had. And I did that for 2 years. And then I went back to treatment to get off the pot. Found a 12-step program for drug addicts that I just really saved my life in 1989. And like I said, until the year 2000, when my mom passed away, I was, pretty, for the first 6 years, I guess, I was 12-step queen. It was all about the 12 steps. I was doing service and gave my life entirely over to it. And then I went back to university, and kind of that became my higher power. And I went to school for 13 years and 3 degrees. And I felt I had fallen away from my recovery when I used after my mom died, which explains why I used after my mom died. But yeah, so I guess I hate telling the old story, because it's so foreign to me that I lived that life. But at the very basis of what was going on for me is, I think, the basis what happens for most women who kind of are in addiction. And I just always had the sense that I wasn't enough, and that that I didn't have anything going for me. I was always afraid. I was afraid to talk. Look at me now. Um, I had nothing to say. I felt invisible unless I was using, and then I could have that false kind of personality. But yeah, I think addiction for me is just that tiny, tiny little seed deep inside of us that says you're not enough. And if we don't take care of that tiny little hole, then it gets really big, and we're addicted, and it's like chaos. And when we take care of it and fill it with things that are good for us, our kind of addictive tendencies stay at bay a little bit. So yeah, it's just, my story is not very different than so many other people. I think what I'm really inspired by today is that there's so many women who are kind of early exiters. And I think it's because they're understanding that what recovery is, and the message that the disease of addiction is progressive, and that there is a continuum of substance use disorder. I'm really proud that so many women get that, and they're getting off before the truck goes all the way to the dump. And I'm just, I know there's a lot of women in our community who, they may not even be actually addicted. They're just really, they're on that part of the spectrum where they're abusing, and if they keep going, they're going to develop a dependency. But I was not that person. I mean, I had to overdose and lose all sorts of things, my self-respect and everything else. So yeah, that's my past. It's so
Yeah.
far in my past. I don't even know who that person was anymore, but I love her. Like I sometimes talk to her or write to her, and just kind of feel great empathy and love for that young, confused, lonely little girl, that just couldn't speak out about what was really going on for her.
And I like the way that you phrase that too. I like the way you phrase everything, by the way. It's very disassociative, right? And so I think that so many of us become very associated with our behaviors.
Mm.
And there's so many, I mean, talk about your ex-husband being a schizophrenic. I mean, aren't we all, right? There's so many different personalities that we have as addicts. And so if we attach ourselves to any one of those, I think it's detrimental. I think that disconnecting completely from all of it, if you were to completely disconnect from who you were, who that person, who she was, right?
Yeah.
That person 30 years ago, if we completely disconnect from her, then that's where we completely lose sight of a very important aspect of the messaging, because she was there for a reason. He was
Yeah.
there for a reason, to
Yeah.
show us something. There was
Yeah.
something missing in our lives, and that was a giant like sign that, hey, you're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And this is the person that is going to guide you through it, right? And you still have a lot of love for her, right?
I
Like,
do. I do. And like that's, I mean, I don't live there anymore, but I have no shame. I think, I always like the message that I have for women in recovery, especially in early recovery, is that to stay the course, because one day, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and give you all the litany of all the horrible things that I did, because I don't need to bring that up. But I did a lot of really horrible things, a lot of really self-demeaning things, like really horrifically things, like disgusting things. And I have no shame. I have no, would I prefer that I hadn't had to do those things? Of course, I'm human, but those are, and again, this is kind of, I swear a lot, apparently. I don't notice until I get on a podcast, but I tell this has been the message to women that I've mentored or sponsored or anything for the last 30 years, because my first sponsor told me something similar. And I just say, like, the shit we did was just the shit we did. It wasn't who we were. And that's how I feel about it right now. Like, so I look back at things, like some things, quite frankly, like I can laugh like my head off to think, oh my God, like, did that really happen? So I just think that it's great you need a little bit of time away from it, but eventually, if you just kind of keep going in the right direction, the shame, which I think the shame is what we carry in with us when we first come into recovery. It's just this like shame and regret. And it's just this thing, this tape that plays over and over in our head about, oh my God, I can't believe that I did that. Oh, I don't want to even think that I did that. I'm going to have some more drugs. And really, the further away you get from it, you're able to put it in perspective and not only forgive yourself, but just really, there's just no emotional charge to any of it for me anymore. It's like I'm curious about it sometimes, but that's about the only real feeling I have around it.
So when you talk about, I love the topic of not enough, because that is
Mhm.
guilt and shame and not enough, all
Mhm.
these limiting beliefs that
Mhm.
pretty much everyone listening to this podcast right now can identify with.
Right.
Right. And so what was some of the work that you did to navigate through that and get to the other side?
Yeah. Well, early in my recovery, I worked the steps. I worked the steps on my addiction. I worked the steps on my codependency. I've since worked the steps on my workaholism. I've worked the steps on control. I've worked the steps on grief. But I would say that the work that really shifted things for me was in the first 3 or 4 years of recovery. I went to a psychotherapist twice a week for 18 months. I'd started school and I had access to a psychotherapist for free, and I went twice a week, like for 18 months. Some weeks I probably missed, but um, and in that time I began to deal with the kind of the core childhood issues that had led me to that place where I didn't believe I was enough, that I wasn't lovable, that I wasn't important, that I wasn't seen. And that was, I always kind of look at that like that was the first excavation of those feelings, and getting to the other side of them, and having a sense that um, that I was enough. It's quite interesting because some years ago when I hit the wall with workaholism in 2011, I ended up back with another therapist for a year, like a full year of weekly meetings. And it was like the second excavation of the exact same stuff. Like it was the exact same. It was like my mom's stuff, right? My mom who had passed away, and then I used drugs. And, that's what I was excavating back when I started school. And that's what I was excavating in 2011. It was just like really getting into that, like into the issues in my tissues about it, right? My daughter Taryn is a yoga teacher, and she's just one of the most gifted yoga teachers in the world. And I mean this. And she talks because her teacher taught her about our issues in her tissues, and how, the trauma that we have, and trauma can just be neglect, right? Neglect is trauma. That we have to kind of feel it. We have to kind of bring it up to the kind of the almost the physiological level and release it, which is why yoga is so good. And I also do yoga. I didn't say that I did that, but I do yoga. I don't have a regular yoga practice, but my daughter, we do yoga retreats, so I do a lot of yoga on retreats. So yeah, I would just say that was really so those 2 periods of therapy were so important for me. And then I guess what else is there? The other thing that I really do, the thing that has switched it for me, is writing. Do a lot of journaling, writing, blogging, and yeah, kind of that's about it. That's
Well,
pretty well
putting pen to paper, right? Always, whether
it.
I did my steps on a computer, right? A lot of people talk about, the importance, and I think it's very important too. The handwriting, I do most note taking, handwriting, that kind of a thing. I just happen to do my step work on the
Yeah,
computer. But yes, writing it all down and getting it out of here, right? And getting it
yeah,
out from here, because there's that connection in here that unless I put it on somewhere else, it's just going to keep going back and forth from here to here, which
yes,
creates that turmoil and that chaos.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
is Nikki Myers your daughter's teacher?
She's taken she took Nikki Myers training, but she doesn't do 12-step yoga for recovery. She does her own unique. So she uses a little bit of what she learned there.
Mm.
Taryn's in recovery. She's a young woman in recovery. She doesn't do 12-step recovery at all. She grew up in a 12-step family, but doesn't, it's just never been her pathway. And
Just
to be honest,
curious.
I mean, my 12-step commitment right now, or kind of attachment right now, is not. I love 12-step recovery. I'm a member of a 12-step program. When we're in Mexico, we go to like 2 or 3 meetings a week. But back here at home, by the time Thursday night rolls around and I'm home, just so sporadically, I haven't been to my home group since October. I just I get to,
No shame.
here's the thing is my life is recovery from the moment I open my eyes
Yeah.
till I go to bed at night. And by Thursday night, like I'm nearly done with recovery and I'm not, so, and I don't make any apology for that. I think
Good.
that I just accept that, I'm never going to be one of those people that says I used to be a member of a 12-step program and now I hate it. I'm out of it. Like I'll always be a member. It'll always be a part of my life, but I get to decide how committed I am and kind of what is the work that I do there and how I give back there or not. And I'm just okay with that. Right. I
Well,
think
what's wonderful is that, yeah, She Recovers, right, is your recovery program, right?
it is.
That's
Totally it is. And it's made up of women recovering in all sorts of different areas of their lives in all different ways. So there's, we don't allow, we always say what do we say? What do we always say that I can't remember what we always say? we, what do we do? Schmuck. We appreciate all, it's not the word that we normally use, but something like we appreciate all pathways of recovery and criticize none. And that's pretty well what we feel, right? It's kind of whatever works for you. And I think because I do have such a strong 12-step background, it almost gives me a little, I believe having a 12-step history for going on 31 years, I think people kind of have to listen to me a little bit when I talk about it. Because I'm not talking about it or criticizing it from outside of it. You know what I mean? Like I can look at what doesn't work around 12-step recovery for women. I have a whole list I could tell you. But I can also give you as long a list or longer of why it does work for people. And I think as long as I look at my analysis, because I'm a researcher, my analysis of 12-step recovery is fair and measured. And I think that that's really important. I'm just not a person that's and I don't really take very kindly to people who have never experienced a meeting slogging 12-step recovery, but I do totally respect if people have been to meetings and tried it and it doesn't work, then that's fine. And if people don't want to go there, that's fine too. I think, you can say, listen, I'm not going to go to a 12-step recovery meeting because I've heard enough about it that I don't think it's for me. I totally respect that person too. I guess I just don't want to, I don't like hearing people saying 12 steps sucks and, they've never experienced it or they really don't know that much about it. That's kind of one of my pet peeves.
Well, 12-step doesn't suck and 12-step isn't the only way. So there's the two schools of thought. I think absolutes, when you live on the extremes, right? That again, you're not wearing it like a loose garment. And I love the idea of take what you need and leave the rest, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that once you remove the judgment, the self-righteousness, the soapboxing, and the dharma associated with it, then it comes to what's the intention. The intention is to be inclusive. The intention is to help others. The intention is to be loving. Our highest intention is to love. And so am I being loving if I'm being judgmental, even on myself, right? Like I shouldn't have, right? Like if I use the word I shouldn't, then I'm already shaming myself. It's like I have gotten to a point where I started the SHAIR Recovery Network and the podcast for that reason, to discuss recovery in all pathways, even with the yoga. The only reason why I asked you about Nikki Myers is because her tagline is the issue is in the tissues.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where Karen got it from. Yeah.
Right. So in the issues in the tissues, she just did a marvelous branding, campaign because it's stuck, but it wasn't in any way, shape or form. Okay, well, that's the only way to recover, or whatever the case may be.
No, and Nikki was a speaker at our She Recovers in New York City in May. She was amazing. Like she's totally amazing. And Taryn, credits her with very much of how she's, developed her own unique yoga for recovery based on all the teachings that she's had from all these amazing people.
I was
another woman.
Who?
Durga Lee. She has a program called the Yoga of Recovery, And so Taryn, that's where Taryn did her yoga of recovery training with Durga Lee. And then she trained with Nikki Myers. And then she also did David Emerson's trauma-informed yoga program. So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess what I like to think is that we're talking about people's lives here.
Yes.
And so we need as many ways as there are in the world for people to select and choose, you know. And so we just say that women have to be supported to find and follow individualized pathways and patchworks of recovery. And the reason we say patchworks is, I don't know if you read Bill White's papers.
Mm-mm.
The Bill White papers, you must. Oh, you must. Like he's brilliant. He's just
Bill White.
Google the Bill White papers and
Okay.
recovery. He just wrote the most amazing article on April 6th about the future of recovery support. You'll love it. It's just brilliant. But he wrote an article a few years ago talking about we need to stop using the term pathways on its own, because when we say pathways, but there are different pathways of recovery. It's like there's this pathway or there's that pathway. And so he promoted the use of the word patchworks, which is like you might take a little bit of this pathway and a little bit of this pathway and a little bit of that pathway and create a patchwork. So I loved that idea, which is why we say pathways and patchworks. Because for most of us, I don't know anybody who, even friends of mine who say, well, my pathway is a 12-step pathway and that's all I do. I do 12-step and I do nothing more but 12-step. And I'm like, but you drink green juice. Like, you know, you don't smoke, you whatever, like you are doing you have a more holistic practice of recovery than you even know, because you're just stuck in this, I only do 12-step and I don't do anything else. So that's always fun. Try that next time you have a staunch 12-stepper saying that's all they do.
I
try and tell them that actually they have a very well-rounded program of recovery.
Right. Trust me. Not, it wasn't the Dharma, it's the dogma. Sorry. As I was saying, I go, I'm not saying this right. The dogma. Okay. So,
I knew what
all
you
right.
meant.
So, but this, like, as you were saying it too, I go pathways. I go, I like the term pathways. Then all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, patchworks. That's what I do. Totally in everything. I'm not a vegan. I'm not a vegetarian. I'm not a, yoga this. I'm not a 12-stepper. I'm in recovery. That's a term, right? That's very broad. Recovery covers so much. And I use all these, patch. Oh man, this new term, love
Bill White,
it.
read Bill White. Your mind will be blown. Read Bill White's
wow.
papers. Everything he writes is like groundbreaking.
Well, this is the kind of stuff that, once it catches my attention, once it makes sense, I'm all about it. Right. And so I've been dropping the pathway term for a long time, but pathway again can lead to the dogma, right? Because it's the pathway. And so it's like, you can choose whatever pathway you want, but unless you distinguish, okay, try multiple pathways by patchworks and just take a little bit of this, take what you need and leave. I'm big on that though. I'm big on take what you need and leave the rest. I don't care what it is. It could be, I'm going to go to church because for whatever reason, I feel comfortable in there. I'm going to take what I need and I'm going to leave the rest. And you don't go.
Music.
Yeah. Perfect. Man, that is patchworks. So I'm good. I want to dive into She Recovers. But before we dive into She Recovers, please tell all of our listeners how they can get a hold of you, what you have out there, all your social media, give us the best way for us to connect with you and to find you.
Yeah, the easiest way is on our Facebook page, which is called She Recovers. And then we have a website, which is www.sherecovers.co, not .com. And so that's got all of the different information about all of our different offerings, like our retreats. We have a big She Recovers in LA event coming up, our annual conference in Los Angeles coming up in September. It's going to be amazing. 600 women at the Beverly Hilton in Los Angeles.
Ooh.
Our retreats are on there, but all of our 2018 retreats are sold out, except there's one spot in One Mexico retreat, May 12th to 19th. All of the other retreats this year are sold out. We're going to have a lot more retreats next year. because they sell out a year in advance. It's kind of ridiculous. And we have a She Recovers coach program. So we train women to become recovery coaches. They actually take a life coach and recovery coach training program with the International Association of Professional Recovery Coaches. And then we have a She Recovers coach designation piece that sits on top of that. So there's information on there, and there's information on there about some of our different, we always have kind of like a product merchandising thing going on right now. Our project is a partnership with the Giving Keys. I don't know if any of your listeners know about the Giving Keys. It's a social impact organization out of Los Angeles, and they help people transition out of homelessness.
Mm.
They make these beautiful keys. I don't have mine on, it's upstairs. They stamp like words on a key, and the idea is that you wear your key for as long as you need to be empowered by your chosen word, and then you pass it on to somebody who needs it more. So we partnered with them, and we kind of own the word empowered on a key with the Giving Keys project. So when you purchase that key, you support the Giving Keys and She Recovers. But anyway, so on all those different pages on there, there's links to email us if you have any questions about any of those things. We do also have She Recovers Together, which is a secret Facebook group. Is your group secret or closed?
Mine's closed.
So ours is secret, which just means one more layer of privacy. Yep. So you actually have to you have to be invited. But there is a way to be invited. I just think if you want to be invited, probably the best way to be invited would be to go on to She Recovers and just post on She Recovers and say, I want to be invited to the group, and we can get you in that way. Yeah, we have about 600 women in that group.
That's amazing.
So that's how you get a hold of me. And then I'm also Dawn at sherecovers.co if somebody wants to email me about something.
Well, I'll have all that on your show notes. So go to SHAIR Podcast, Dawn's show notes. We'll have the Facebook. Well, we'll have the fan page, the website, and then, like Dawn says, to get in the private group, like the fan page.
Yeah, if you're actually going to have it on the show notes, maybe I can send you the link. So we have like an administrator named Dorothy Ray, who may or may not be a real person. And so you can just, if you send a friend request to Dorothy Ray, she'll automatically let you in the group. So, but I can send you the link.
Send me that.
To Dorothy Ray.
Yep.
I'll do that. And then it'll just be a link. They can click on it and they'll be in the group. And it is for women or, people who identify as women only. Sorry, boys, no boys.
Not a problem. Not a problem at all. Not offended in the least.
I know.
She Recovers. It kind of implies that she recovers. All right. So beautiful. So now, Dawn, please, part of what we read in the beginning was that your workaholism was what propelled you into discovering or starting or launching or founding She Recovers. So tell us a little bit about what that bottom was, the workaholism bottom, and then how that transitioned into She Recovers.
Yeah, well, I mean, the bottom, quick story was I got into recovery. I went to school for 13 years. My mother contracted terminal leukemia. Then she died while I was doing my PhD. So by the time I finished my PhD, after I had been in school for 13 years, and I really felt behind in my life. I kind of, I was 45 when I finished I was getting ready to defend my PhD dissertation. And at practically the precise moment that I was preparing to do that, a week before I was going to finish my PhD, I ended up in the hospital and I nearly died. And it was discovered that I had colon cancer. So I had a tumor that perforated my colon, and I was septic, and I was apparently within an hour of my death, but a surgeon figured out what was going on and opened me up, and I didn't die for the second or fifth time in my life. I didn't die like I should. Yeah. So then we moved here to beautiful British Columbia. Anyway, I defended my PhD dissertation in the hospital 1 week later, post-surgery. And then, I was in the hospital for 3 or 4 more weeks. And then I came home and we moved here to British Columbia. And then I was really behind. I felt like, wow, like I was a drug addict till I was 27. And then I was, in school for 13 years, kind of in recovery, and then in school, and then taking care of my mom. And now here I am, I've got this PhD. So I've got all these student loans, and I felt really behind in my life, and I started really going quickly in my life. So I was teaching at the university. I was a consultant in mental health and addictions. And I was then I was headhunted into government. So I had 3 careers, 3 full-time jobs, and I was making a lot of money, and I was feeling really important. And I was just like giving her, and I was just adrenaline seeking. Like it was just the adrenaline of then it was busy. Then it was not a full life. It was busy and insane. And I did that for 6 years. And I went crazy. It was just like I was doing cocaine, only I've never had a desire to do cocaine again, but I mean, if I'd been doing cocaine, then I never would have slept. And as it was, I was not sleeping. I was lying to my husband about how much I was working. I was losing relationships because I was always working and never doing anything else. My health was deteriorating. I would do things like I would go into the guest room with my laptop in the middle of the night and work underneath the covers in case my husband got up to go to the bathroom. I didn't want him to see the light on my computer. It was insane. And then I started falling apart. Twice in 1 week, I burst into tears during executive meetings with like the big bosses in government. One, because my boss looked at me the wrong way. And the other because I was just exhausted, and and somebody asked me if I could do something by the following day, and I just burst into tears and put my head down on the desk and said, "No, I can't." So anyway, and I just still remember, like, everyone looked like, "Whoa, who's this top performing superwoman? What the hell is going on with her?" So I went on leave for 4 months and realized how sick I was with my workaholism. And at that time decided that I wanted to do something more meaningful than work myself to death. Started blogging. I started a blog called Recovering Dawn and started connecting with women about being in recovery from all the things. I was talking about being in recovery from addiction and from cancer and from losing my mom and from workaholism and from codependency. And it just felt really meaningful to me to have these connections. So when I went back to work after 4 months, I couldn't continue blogging, because for those of us who write, that one blog can take 6 hours. So I just switched over to Facebook, and instead of calling it Recovering Dawn, I called it She Recovers. And then I went back to work, and I did actually maintain that was the one time in my life where I really was balanced, because I had everybody in my life making sure that I didn't get to work till 8:30, that I took my lunch, that I took my breaks, that I left at 4:30. Nobody wanted to see me crack up again. And then about 5 months into being back at work and the Facebook page kind of taking off, government had massive cutbacks, and they dissolved the entire unit that I was leaving. So myself and 12 employees. And I remember getting laid off. Like it was that horrible thing where they take you into an office and they take your BlackBerry. It's like, oh my God, you can't have my BlackBerry. And within 5 minutes, I was devastated that I no longer had this job that I loved, and my team was no longer going to be able to work. And I was relieved. I was just relieved that I could do something different. And they gave me severance for a year. So I took that year to do some recovery coach training, sat on the beach in Mexico, and decided that with Taryn, who had done her yoga for recovery training, that we would do a retreat. So in November 2012, we held our first retreat, our first She Recovers retreat in Tulum, Mexico. And in 3 weeks from now, we'll be in Mexico hosting our 20th retreat.
Oh, wow.
We do them in Mexico now. We also do them here on the West Coast. We were in Bali for 3 retreats last year. We've done them in California, and we're actually heading off next week to go and visit a venue on the East Coast so that we can offer East Coast retreats. And it just kind of took off, like with the retreats. And I stayed, so I never went back to government, and I never went back to teaching, but I did go back to consulting. And for most of the past, however many years it's been, I was sustaining myself through my consulting practice, focusing primarily on mental health addictions and intimate partner violence, creating materials for health care workers and social workers, actually, is mostly what I did, best practice research. But in the last 18 months, She Recovers just has taken over my life, and I don't do very much paid work right now. Kind of given myself until January to get this She Recovers thing fully off the ground in a way that's sustainable. And I can always take more, consulting if I have to, but right now it's really been about She Recovers. And we started the coach program last year. And like I said, we did She Recovers in NYC, which we had Marianne Williamson and Glennon Doyle and Gabby Bernstein and Elizabeth Vargas from 2020 were our speakers. It was a really, really big deal.
Wow.
And yeah, in September, Cheryl Strayed and Janet Mock and some other really
names, yeah,
speakers, inspirational speakers. Amy Dresner is going to be, actually, she's a special guest. She'll be speaking. She's not like a full blown speaker, but she's going to be talking at our event. She's going to be, we're doing a red carpet gala on Saturday night, and she's going to be talking there. And yeah, it's going to be a big deal. So it's been a project. It's been a passion project. My daughter and I work equally on it. She does all the yoga and most of the social media. And, we have this other creative team of people that have volunteered and are working with us. And we're we have some really big projects coming up. There'll be lots of announcements in the next few weeks. That's what it is. It's just, and really today, it's still a Facebook page. I mean, that's kind of where we hang out and in the group. And it's, we call ourselves a movement because we feel like it is a movement. We have coaches who are now starting She Recovers chapters or sharing circles in different cities across North America, and just kind of creating community, right? Just kind of creating a space for women to get together, regardless of what they're recovering from. I mean, women in our groups are recovering from grief and cancer and all the things. I'd say 80% of them are in recovery from substance use disorders, but another 20% is just a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And it really does just make for a much richer sharing experience, because we all do experience some of these things. Like many of us will experience cancer in our lifetime, or caregiving. A lot of the women that I know these days are now caring for their parents, their aging parents. My sister cares for her dad. So yeah, it's just kind of this amazing community and a movement, and really what we're trying to do. Oh, we just started a nonprofit. Did I mention? It's not even like it's just in process right now. Kind of the registration is in process, because we want to take what we're doing and make it more accessible for women. Right now, you have to be able to afford to come to Mexico, or even our workshops. There's a price tag attached to everything that we do.
Of course.
Except for the Facebook page or the Facebook group. But we want to make in real life, in-person opportunities available to more women. And so we envision the nonprofit is going to help us do that.
Well, it's amazing. And as far as the shift, because really all it is a shift. We take this information, we take our foundation of recovery, the 12-step foundation, and we are able to take it to the next level. That's all it is. It's not about, I should go to more meetings, or I should do this, or I should do that. I either want to go to more meetings, or I don't want to go to more meetings, or I want to do something else that allows me to do something even more, something even greater, something that creates an opportunity for women in this particular case that want to recover from all kinds of things. And there's pathways and patchworks and yoga and spirituality and meditation and recovery. And let's just keep patching things in there and create a library of resources that, when you think about what we bring to the table, it's like when some people, and it's a trip, it is, because I'll get people, fortunately, I'm very clear about what I do and why I do it. But it's like, Omar should be going to more meetings, and Omar should be sponsoring more people. Omar, and I'm like, guys, I appreciate that that's where you come from, but there are thousands of people that listen to the SHAIR podcast every single week. We have almost 5,000 people on the SHAIR Recovery Network that, God, thank you, HP baby, right? Because it's always for me, it's always HP, right? He gave me the opportunity. He gave me this personality. He gave me the forethought to start something, a movement. I love the way, it is a movement, right?
We're all part of the movement, and we're all co-creating the movement, right?
Yes.
It's like our tagline is, we're stronger together. And then we mean that.
And it's not, we are stronger together. And it's not a movement that bridges a gap. It's a movement that bridges gaps, right? So there's just these bridges that we create just by coming together as a collective community and discussing all these wonderful pathways and patchways and all this kind of really fun, light, like how do I become the best version of myself?
And I just think, we just can reach so many more people when we're as diversified as we are. And, it's so that now you might have somebody who would never think to go to a 12-step recovery meeting, but is struggling with addiction, might come across somebody in their yoga class who has some recovery. You might, if we're more open about it, which I mean, I'm obviously very open about it, the more open we are, you might overhear somebody talk about a She Recovers retreat and you're going like, I want recovery. I mean, it's just, I think the recovering out loud piece for us is so important because for so many years we were hiding our recovery. I mean, in the millions, we were
Yes.
just, everything was hidden. So I love the openness of our movement and of our recovery, and again, it just comes back to everybody who knows me knows that I'm in recovery. And, that's really served me well in terms of when people need help, they know where to come. And it's not always that I can help them, but I can always direct them to someone who can. And I just like, it's deadly out there, as you know, and just the more we can do, the more. I think I was really driven. I always say that I was really inspired to do what I do, for Taryn and I to do what we do with She Recovers. Part of what inspired me was, 25 years at the time of watching women in particular try 12-step recovery, and it just didn't work for them. It just did not fit. And not because that there was anything wrong with 12-step recovery necessarily. It just wasn't what fit for them for various reasons. And I would see them leave the program, and they would leave it thinking that, well, if I can't do that, then I can't do recovery. I might as well use, because they heard the message, because some people tried to make sure they heard the message that if you're not in 12-step recovery, you're not in recovery. And I just remember for years thinking, and I would say to people, like, if this doesn't work for you, how like we say, if this meeting doesn't work for you, try another meeting. I would say, like, if this meeting doesn't work for you, then try another meeting. And if that meeting doesn't work for you and you find out this program doesn't work for you, then try another program. And if the 12-step programs don't work for you, try something else. And like, the people would come up to me at the end of meetings and go, you can't talk like that here. And I would say, oh, but honey, I can. Yeah, I can. I'm going to. So shut up. And it just, and I remember some people coming, like, I remember one woman coming up to me and going, but I won't be in recovery. And I go, yeah, you still will be. Like, recovery is just about, trying to do the next right thing and to live a more authentic life. And to be well and healthy and well-rounded. Like, 12-step recovery does not own recovery. So.
Identity, right, as what we opened up today too, which was separating ourselves from our behavior, from who we really are. Like, who am I? Am I my behaviors, or am I a child of God? Am I a spirit? Am I energy? Am I, right, loving, caring, affectionate, right? Is that who I am? Or am I these behaviors? And so separating, what is recovery? So it's like, you're not in recovery. Well, what exactly is recovery? Can you define recovery for me? And where in the dictionary does it say recovery, a 12-step fellowship? So,
I really like the SAMHSA, and I can't repeat it. I wish I could. I used to be able to, but like the SAMHSA, SAMHSA has actually got the best definition of recovery that I've seen.
But you can't. Okay,
I can share it with you. I'll send you the link.
Okay. So two things. Number one, what I like about She Recovers is a lot of things. But one of the things is, here, one of our fellowships, the most popular meeting of the week is the Tuesday night meeting, because it's the men's meeting upstairs and the women's meeting downstairs. So why it is, I don't know. It just is. And so I think that creating that safety of She Recovers, where there is no men, and I don't have to worry about being vulnerable. I don't have to worry about being picked up on, or I don't have to worry about, I don't have
to worry about picking someone up. I mean, it
right,
goes both
exactly,
ways.
It goes both ways. So
I don't have to be worried about being
right.
attracted to someone.
So I know it's very clear, very specific of why I'm here. I'm here to recover, and whatever that means to you, I'm here to recover as a woman. Right. And I love that idea. Number two is, I just finished reading The Universe Has Your Back. Mm-hmm. Big fan of Gabby Bernstein's. How close are you to Gabby? I would love to have her on the show.
Oh yeah. Good luck with that.
Thanks for that.
We love Gabby, but yeah, she's just a going concern. I would say that I would, yeah, she's
Tough.
not available for things like that
Okay.
generally, unfortunately.
Had to ask.
I know we would have loved to have had her for some things too.
Ooh,
And we
man.
know her, right? But yeah, she's so busy.
So edgy. Just that she's got this great edge about her that I just,
Oh yeah. Oh
we're
yeah.
listening to the book. My wife and I,
She's amazing. She's just
we
a
got,
little firecracker.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's the whole
Yeah.
thing. Okay. So with that being said, then we are going to close.
Hey.
And the way I like to close is for the newcomer. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions about your early
Oh, yeah.
recovery, and I want you to respond with some inspiring answers you can share with our newcomers. Dawn, are you ready?
Yeah.
Let's do this. Okay. So number 1, what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
I was using drugs. um, Probably. No, for me, honestly, it was relationships. I got
Okay.
into a relationship with somebody who smoked pot, and like the relationship, I just felt like, yeah, it was just dumb. So the relationship became my focus, and therefore I started smoking pot with them. So
Got it.
sure, that's what it was, relationships.
God, that first part was the best so far. I was using drugs.
That too. It's true.
And at what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
Oh, I guess it was, I think it was probably at a convention, and it was like I think I had 3 weeks clean the last time. I mean, other than 2000, like in 1989, I had 3 weeks clean, and I went to a convention, and I just felt a part of. I just felt a part of the room. Like there was about 400 people, and speakers, and yeah, I don't know. I just kind of felt like, okay, well, it was my first time at something like that, and I just
Mm,
felt like, and there was a speaker, and I don't remember her, what, she made me cry, and I just felt really moved. And yeah, I mean, after that, it was just like I was going to 7 meetings a day or 7 meetings a week, and taking my kids with me and doing service, and just kind of totally embraced what was being offered to me at the time. I always say, like 30 years ago, nobody was saying take a yoga class or read a book, or listen to a podcast. There was only 12-step recovery. And so I'm glad that I was one of the people for whom it resonated, because if it hadn't have been, I'd be dead,
oof.
hands down.
I love it. I love it. Those conventions, for those of you who haven't been to one, they are amazing. The energy is through the roof.
Yeah.
So, check them out. All right. Do you have a favorite book that you would recommend to a newcomer that you read in early recovery, or
Oh
now,
my gosh, so
whatever you
many.
want?
What's it called? John Bradshaw's book. So he died. He died like last year or something. But he was kind of the pioneer of the whole. I can't find my Amazon app, of the inner child work. No, it's healing the shame that binds you. John
Oof,
Bradshaw, healing the shame
man,
that binds you.
do I love the name of that?
Yeah, it was. We were, but way back in the day. In fact, we still joke, a lot of people who were around at the time, about it was all about our inner child, and
Mm-hmm.
everything was our inner child. And we just got so sick of everybody talking about their inner child. One day, we started. And this is like in the early '90s. People would say things like, "Tell your inner child to shut up, or I'm going to beat the crap out of it." Like, like we just got so tired of the inner child. Everybody was using the inner child. It's like now when people say my addict, I get a little irritated. I'm like, unless you have multiple personalities, you don't have an addict. You have addictive tendencies. But yeah, the inner child. But so I shouldn't make fun of the inner child work, because it is so important.
It is.
But yeah, you can overdo it if you're always caring for your inner child and not putting on your big girl panties and big boy panties every day.
That's fantastic. All right. Okay. Wonderful. So, Dawn, do you have, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
Oh, the best. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. It's still the very best thing I ever received. Just let it go.
Wonderful.
Always.
And finally, number 5, if you could give our newcomers only one suggestion, what would that be?
Okay.
Or our women? How about that?
Yeah, I was going to say, other than, I just don't do guys. I'm so used to talking to women. I mean, I don't think I kind of think of globally.
Talk to
You
our
know, I would.
women.
So if there's a woman out there who's a newcomer and you're not sure if you really want recovery, maybe because you're not sure you can do recovery. My advice to you is try it. Like give it even say for a month. Like, or I know we do this for today, but just like give it a period of time where you're going to try this new way of life. That's what I would say to you. And if you use tomorrow, that doesn't mean that you failed. It just means you've got to try harder tomorrow. Like just try, like just try and keep trying. Um, if you know that you have a desire for a better life, like for an amazing life, just keep trying and you will get it. Like you will get it because it is all in the effort. You know, it's always in the effort. And if you're trying and people see you're trying, they're going to support you trying. And yeah, just maybe I would say keep trying and ask for help. That's what I would do. Keep trying and ask for help, whatever it is. If you need help with parenting, if you need help with your relationship, if you need help with a job, like just ask for help. There is help everywhere. So keep trying and ask for help. So that's two things, but that's what I would say to you. Like keep trying is really important, but so is asking for help.
Well, you know, while you're giving the suggestion to the women in the SHAIR Recovery Network, I was pulling up my Facebook insights just so I could tell you that in the SHAIR Recovery Network, we have 57.9% women.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a very strong, very active membership in the group.
Well, and some really amazing women in the group too. I mean, I belong to a lot of groups and I try and engage in all of them a little bit because I get so much out of it, not because I think I have anything great smokes to contribute, but I know I love Brandy.
Brandy is a sweetheart. And I
met Brandy. I met Brandy in LA in October. We did a workshop and I kind of have a little bit of a girl crush on Brandy.
She's a sweetheart. Yes. And we do have very strong women in the group. It's a very safe group.
Yeah.
Right.
Very good and uplifting and positive. And yeah, I like it. You're doing very good. You know, we set the tone and we create and co-create our reality, right? Yeah, I think it's cool.
Yes. And I can't even take the credit for it anymore. There's 8 admins in there. Jude is, you know, very, very, very active in there. Jude's our strongest member. And then Annette. Oh, wow. Annette is it's probably a tie between Jude and Annette on who's active.
Oh, cool. I'll have to watch for them. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, they're awesome. The SHAIR Recovery Network has 8 admins and the 2 strongest ones are women.
Oh my gosh.
And so it gives that very safe environment. If there's any guys trying to poach in there, they step in very strong, very hard.
Well, I'll have to watch for them then. I'll get to know them a little bit better now that I know who I'm looking for.
They're beautiful, beautiful women. All right. So Dawn, wow. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I'm so happy. I was technically, and we had the delays because I had a problem with my dad, and then you had to cancel for some reason. And then today I didn't think that the technology was going to work, but here we are an hour and a half later. Goodness me.
Well, that's usually how long
is it? Okay.
Yeah, hour and a half. Yes, no, we had a few whatever, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. Here we are right now, and we're on the same page, and we're trying to bring inclusivity to recovery. And
it's working. You're going to look up Bill White?
Yes.
And I'm going to send you the SAMHSA definition of recovery and a link so people can join our group if they're interested.
Patchwork. And I'll have all of Dawn's information on her show notes. So take a look. All right. So folks.
We have anybody in the Atlanta area. I guess it might not. I don't know when this is going up, but we're doing an Atlanta workshop on the 28th. That's pretty soon.
On this month?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it won't go out before then. But there's lots of workshops and lots of retreats and lots of She Recovers.
LA sisters. I mean, come on down. It's going to be amazing.
I love it. All right. So we have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.